Hi, welcome back. Just as a reminder, these videos are covering 5 main topics. And we would like to say well done because we're up to the 4th topic. So you are well over halfway through the My Life, My Voice peer supporter training. You should also have had 3 group face-to-face Zoom sessions by now to practice the skills we've talked about, and we hope you've been able to connect with some other participants of this online training.
So just to revise what we've gone over so far, the first topic was what is peer support? The second main topic was identity and connection. And then we covered communication and peer support. So this is the topic we're on now. The 4th one is disability in Aotearoa and models of wellness. And then finally, our last main topic is guidance for peer supporters. So let's get into it. In this section, we're going to give you some context around disability in Aotearoa, New Zealand. We will introduce you to some documents that might be useful to you. There's a lot more detailed information about today's topic in your pukapuka. We're going to touch on some of it very lightly, and if you want to find out more, feel free to go deeper.
As a peer supporter, it is important that you have some understanding of disability from a broad context. Obviously, we all have our own personal experiences of living with an impairment in Aotearoa. These experiences are going to be very important in peer support because it is the common experiences of disabled people that make this support unique. Because our experiences are similar, we understand each other better. Having said that, we also need to acknowledge that our experiences are not exactly the same as other people's. Similar, but not the same. To help us understand these experiences that are different, it is useful to have a broad knowledge of disability from different perspectives. Here's one example. You might have been born blind and been educated at a school for blind students. This might have meant leaving home and whānau as a young child. You may have found this really difficult, and you may or you might not have made some long life friends with other blind people. This is a different experience from a person who developed blindness at an older age. So if we have a wider understanding of disability in Aotearoa, we can appreciate that there is more to disability than our own experiences, and we can draw on this knowledge to help us understand disability from another person's experience.
For those with other impairments, especially in the areas of learning disability and mental health, there were institutions where people were isolated from whānau and people were often treated badly. There is currently an investigation into this abuse. Our history as disabled people has often been painful, difficult, and abusive. While we acknowledge that pain and trauma and its lasting effect on our people, we don't want to be stuck in that place. We need to acknowledge those tangata whai kaha, disabled people, and whānau, and move on, working together to change disabling systems. We're going to play a video that focuses on the current work being done in the disability sector. This clip is of our former Disability Rights Commissioner, Paula Tesoriero, reflecting on 2021 and outlining her goals for 2022. We can use this video to practice our listening skills. While the video plays, we ask you to think about some of the issues that are mentioned that exist for disabled people. It's about 10 minutes long, so get comfortable and we'll see you back here in 10.
Ngā mihi nui, kia koutou katoa, ko Paula Tesoriero tōku ingoa. I'm the Disability Rights Commissioner. Welcome to my end of year report, where I talk about my reflections on 2021 and goals for next year. Before I reflect on this year, I'd first like to really acknowledge those of you, some of who I met for the first time, many who I've worked with for a long time, who have done some really hard mahi. despite the really challenging circumstances that we've all faced this year as we adjust to living with COVID and the new variants. To those people, too many to name, I applaud and thank you for everything you do for the disability community. By working together, you've achieved a lot this year, and it's been a privilege to engage with you all, and I'm really looking forward to a productive year together next year to further the rights of disabled people. And we know from too many key reports and surveys this year that disabled people continue to fall behind in a number of areas, and we need that to change. Saying 2021 has been a challenging year would be a real understatement. But I'm amazed that despite the challenges of various lockdowns, we've accomplished so much by working together. Because of our collective and collaborative approach, some barriers to equitable and accessible vaccine, health and wellbeing services were lowered. But there is much more to do as we understand and navigate the traffic light system of managing COVID and what a post-COVID world might look like. Here at the Human Rights Commission, we are facing a significant increase in requests for assistance from people as New Zealanders try and navigate the various rights and responsibilities to do with COVID. Having said all of that, I'm much more optimistic now than I have been for a long time about shifting towards a more diverse, equitable and inclusive society for disabled people. So let's touch on a couple of big developments of 2021. First, there was the announcement of the new Ministry of Disabled People next year, the scaling up of Enabling Good Lives, and proposed new accessibility legislation, and finally, a 25-year strategy to address family and sexual violence, which will specifically attend to the prevention and impacts on tangata whaikaha Māori and disabled people. And I hope that will see the start of a fundamental shift. What's really critical with all of those announcements is that disabled people are front and centre in making these changes happen. COVID aside, 2021 saw me work on a number of key focus areas, and I just want to touch on some of them quickly. So some of the big things that we were involved in this year was firstly, the Human Rights Commission launched our guidelines on the right to a decent home, and I and the team were able to bring a disability lens to that work. I was also able to contribute to the ongoing health reforms, and that will continue to be a big focus next year. A big focus this year has been on really trying to continue advocating and putting pressure on the need to build an inclusive education system so that all disabled tamariki and rangatahi can thrive in our New Zealand education system. I also had input into some of the housing reforms, and that will also be a big focus next year. And this year, I set up a justice roundtable where, with a group of amazing professionals, disabled people, academics and others, who we hope next year will further contribute to some thinking about the justice system and how it could improve for disabled people. I just want to expand on a few additional pieces of work that I'm really proud of. The first is the former Children's Commissioner, Judge Andrew Beecroft, and I launched our report to the Prime Minister on fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, a call to action. The report called for much better recognition and support for people affected by FASD and their whānau, and made a number of recommendations that I hope will be implemented. Next year, this work will also start to look at other groups who miss out on being able to access critical support services. People with ADHD, people with some rare disorders, people with ME, just to name a few, who don't have equitable access. Recently, I also released 2 reports on violence and abuse of tangata whaikaha Māori and disabled people. Whakamanahia te tiriti, whakahaumarutia te tangata. Honour the treaty, protect the person. And the second report, whakamahia te tūkino kore inaia nei, āmiuri ake nei, acting now for a violence and abuse-free future. These reports set out, for the first time, the evidence available on the cause and impacts of violence and abuse against tangata whaikaha Māori and disabled people. They came with a set of comprehensive recommendations that must be implemented if we are to turn around this neglect and abuse that we have seen. And then another really exciting priority for 2021 was working closely with our community to co-design a strategy for challenging the discriminatory attitudes towards disability and disabled people. The working title for this is Project Mobilise. 2022 will see me bringing those reports and campaign to life. I will be seeking partners to help bring to life Project Mobilise to reality. My vision is for a long-term movement that becomes self-determining and perpetuating and goes over many years. It is a vision where disabled people live good lives in Aotearoa and attitudes are non-discriminatory. Our co-design group, comprising tangata whaikaha Māori, disabled people, Pacifica disabled and non-disabled people, will present the strategy in the first quarter of 2022. I will then work with philanthropic organisations and the government to get this off the ground. So I'll be meeting with a lot of people to find the necessary funding and partners to bring together this 5-year campaign of social change. On violence and abuse of tangata whaikaha Māori and disabled people, I will focus on making sure the 2 reports I launched are familiarised with policy writers, educators, influencers and government. I will establish an action plan to work through those recommendations. I will continue advocating for equal access to disability support services for those with FASD and also those with other impairments. And I will continue my work on advocating for an inclusive education system. I expect to be doing more on the housing front next year, so watch this space. I will continue my work with our Justice Roundtable and continue to have input into the health reforms and the establishment of the new ministry. And of course, there will be the ongoing need to ensure that the COVID response adequately addresses the needs for disabled people in Aotearoa. These initiatives intersect with our business as usual work program for 2022, which is more extensive and detailed. I will continue to do all I can to ensure that disabled people are central in decision making across all fronts, in particular with the new ministry being established. I encourage you to learn more about that, to get involved, and also to make a submission on the proposed accessibility legislation so we can ensure it's as good as possible. More detailed information on this report will be available on my social media page and on our website. Finally, thank you for all that you do for the disability community. It's a privilege to work with you all, and I look forward to working collaboratively next year to further advance the rights of disabled people here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Ngā mihi nui, kia koutou katoa.
Welcome back. I hope you found the video useful and learnt something from it. The actions that are happening are linked to some very important documents and legislation or laws many of which you will be familiar with. The first is our founding document, Te Tiriti o Waitangi. Remembering back to our second main topic, can you name the 3 Ps and the 2 Po?
I can.
Go on then, Sean.
So we have participation, protection and partnership. Tūranga Waiwai and Tino Rangatiratanga.
Excellent. Probably helps that you have a script with them all listed on it.
Well, yeah, but we won't talk about that. I mean, come on. Another important document that relates specifically to improving the lives of tangata whaikaha is the Māori Disability Action Plan called Whaia Te Ao Marama. Whaia Te Ao Marama is a culturally anchored approach to supporting Māori with disability, tangata whaikaha Māori, and their whānau, because Māori are more likely to be disabled than the general population. Most tangata whaikaha Māori identify as Māori first, so access to Te Ao Māori, the Māori world, is important. There is also a Pacifica action plan called Whaewa Ora and the New Zealand Disability Strategy. There's more information about these in your puka puka or resource book.
When we think about peer support, remember we are thinking about disabled people supporting disabled people. So we think about partnership, common experiences, and the values of peer support. How we use our communication skills to build relationships that are mana enhancing based on respect and manaakitanga. Through peer support, we learn from each other, we grow and we develop. So now we're going to briefly look at some more documents about disability in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Again, these are described in more detail in your puka puka.
The next document we'd like to introduce you to is the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, commonly referred to as the UNCRPD. The UNCRPD is an agreement that the government has made with the United Nations to ensure that disabled New Zealanders have the same human rights as any other citizen in Aotearoa. The convention was signed in 2008 and has over 30 articles that describe the rights we all have. When we talk about the UNCRPD, we're talking about the disability rights. Tangata whaikaha Māori and disabled people have been pushing for our rights to be recognised since the 1970s. In 1981, we had the International Year of Disabled Persons, which resulted in the formation of a pan-disability organisation in Aotearoa, New Zealand. This organisation is called the Disabled Persons Assembly, or DPA. This organisation is made up of disabled people speaking out and doing things for ourselves. The important information from the signing of the UNCRPD is that all disabled people have human rights.
There is a whole human rights system of laws that support our rights. These include 6 main pieces of legislation or laws. One to mention quickly is the Human Rights Act, which aims to ensure all people in New Zealand are treated fairly and equally. The Act also sets out the role of the Human Rights Commission. Unlawful discrimination occurs when a person is treated unfairly or less favourably than another person in the same or similar circumstances. The last act we feel is good to be made aware of course, is the Health and Disability Commission and the Disability Commissioner Act, which promotes and protects the rights of health consumers and disability services consumers. Under this Act is the Code of Health and Disability Service Consumer Rights, which everyone providing health and disability services in New Zealand needs to be familiar with. These are known as the Code of Rights. You may have seen posters in your GP's office or hospitals outlining your Code of Rights. If something happens that you feel is against your rights, or if a person you are supporting through a peer supporter relationship feels that their rights have been breached, there is usually an organisation that you can make a complaint with.
Well, those are all the documents and acts that we want to introduce you to and give you an overview of. Now, we're totally aware that we have given you a lot of information in this video, and now would be a good time to take a pause and think about all of what is happening around disability in Aotearoa and how this affects each of us. Again, a reminder that these are all in your puka puka, and of course, you can find a lot of information on the internet if you would like to take a deeper dive into these documents. So, we'll leave you now with a final thought. Well, more of a question that you can think about. What would our lives be like without some or all of these documents? Take care, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye for now.